building web intelligence reports to look like dashboards. And mainly what I'm going to be talking about here are some concepts of ways you can build your charts and interactive ways that you may not have thought of before, that makes it more interactive and lets you display information in a way that is very meaningful to your users. All right? So.
If you start rolling, we'll understand that.
Now I'm not displaying. But also,
It's feedbacking off of the. It's not doing it. Did you turn it off? Oh, the battery's low. That's probably. Good.
okay. All right. So I'm going to show you the finished results first so that you know where we're headed and then how I built it. All right? So. Okay. Here's the end result. And I've increased my browser zoom level just so that hopefully you'll be able to see the formulas when I'm building them. So that's why this doesn't fit in the screen. Normally it would, but both those charts would fit in there nicely. All right. So in this occasion, what we want to be able to do is take advantage of that 80-20 rule, where 20% of your customers or 20% of your products are selling the most. That concept of being able to see who your top performers are and where you should be spending your time, or which products are selling the most, which customers are buying the most, those types of things. So that's the purpose of this dashboard, that they want to be able to view that information. So we're going to show the top cities that are above the 80th percentile mark, and then be able to drill from a particular city and see the top customers in this Pareto chart below that shows, here's my 80% line. So these are my top performing, the 20% of customers that are contributing to that revenue, the top revenue for that particular city. All right, so let me show you how we built that. I'm going to start off here with a blank canvas, and I'm going to add some color to this. So I'll right click and format the report, and on appearances I'll choose a dark blue background. I don't think that's the one no. No. It's more of a U of A color. Okay. All right, and then I'm gonna hide my header because I don't need it in this particular case. So I'm just gonna right click and hide the header. I've already set up a query here, a simple query that's bringing in my customer city, state, and revenue for a particular year and just some particular states in this case. So we run that, and I'll bring in state, city, and revenue and drop them in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is create the input control that's going to select a particular state. So in my input controls here, I'll create a new input control based on customer state. And I'm going to use radio buttons. Listed values can be from the report. I don't want an all selection, so I'll uncheck that. And when you uncheck the all, you always have to select a default value. So in this case, we'll select Arizona for our default. And I think I only have 8, but I'll have it list 10 there just so they all fit. And then I'll say finish. Okay, so we've got our list, our input controls with our states listed there. And I want to confirm that that's working before I proceed. So I'm going to switch to California. And yes, my table changes to California and California cities. And the same if I move to Florida. All right, so now I'm ready to find that 80th percentile. So I'm going to add a new column here to my report. And I like to start just by dragging my object that I'm going to base this formula on into the column and then using the formula bar to modify my formula. And if I'm going to need to be selecting objects in there, then I'll open up the formula editor. So this is how I like to start. And what I want in this case is the percentile. And then semicolon, and I want 80%. So 0.8. And that gets me in an amount per row, right? Which is exactly the same amount for that row. So we don't want that. What I want it in is for each state to show me the total value there for the state. So I'll specify some input control. I want it to calculate the revenue per city and state, but output it at the state level. So I get the same amount for each city for that state. Okay? So I'm gonna say percentile of revenue in open parenthesis, and then here's where our open up, oops, not that, formula editor. In customer city, semicolon, customer state, close the parenthesis. All right. And then output it in customer state. Let's see. All right. So now I have the same amount repeating for each city. So this is going to give me a straight line across my chart that I want to see, the 80th percentile amount. Okay? Just to make sure this is changing by state again, I'm going to test out my input control, and I see yes, it is changing. So at this point, I want to be able to filter and only display the cities that are above that amount. So to make sure it's doing what I want it to do, I'm going to add a descending sort on the revenue column. All right. So that goes down to, for this 90th percent, to cash in here. So I'm going to create a variable, which I'll start in my report again. So, I mean in the block. Insert a new column over here. And I'm going to say if the revenue is greater than the 80th percentile value, then 1 else 0. And then I can filter on that. All right? So before I proceed, I'm going to create a formula, a variable out of my formula here. So this is my 80th percentile. So again, I'll drag revenue just to start off my formula and type in here if revenue is greater than or equal to my 80th percentile, variable, then 1, else 0. All right. So indeed it is showing a 1, and the zeros start here where it drops below the 90,000 here. So I know that that's working. So I'm going to get rid of the state column. I don't need that anymore. And I'll add a filter on this new column. First, I'll give it a name. Filter above 80th percentile. So if I create a filter on that now, where that equals a 1, okay. Now, it actually worked as far as the display because it is showing through the city of Cashin here. But notice two things. My value here used to be 90,000 and now it says 132. And these numbers look odd here. I mean, it's showing zeros even though I filtered for 1. And the reason for that is now we've added another filter on this, and so that 80th percentile is calculating on the values that are presently displayed in there. So to get around that, I need to add a no filter on my 80th percentile so that it gives me an 80th percentile for that state. Okay? So I'm going to modify this formula and add a no filter formula on there, which is just no filter for that. Why did you do that? Okay. And okay. There. So we've got our 90,000 back for our no filter, our 80th percentile, I mean, and also now the filter formula is showing a 1 for all of those as well. All right. So now I can get rid of this column. And I'm going to do one more thing. I always like to do any formatting of numbers when it's in a table before I turn it into a chart, because it's so much easier to format here. So I will format the numbers without decimals. So with a $, without decimals for both of these columns. All right. And then I'm going to turn this into a column line chart here. All right. So now I'm displaying all my cities here that are above the 80th percentile. I wouldn't want this legend displaying there, so we'll get rid of that. And then because I have this dark background, I'm going to remove the background on this chart and change the font to white, which works really fast with this high contrast. So that turns all my font here to white, but then I have to get rid of the black background. So I'll format the chart, and on the background, take that down to 0. And then we have to do the plot area as well. And then I will remove the titles on the category access and the value access because those aren't really needed. And then on the title, I'm going to include the customer state in there. So the selected customer state revenue by city. So, for example, Arizona cities above 80th percentile. So I'll add a custom title and I'll put the customer state here. Plus cities above 80th percentile. All right, it's happy with that. Let me change the font to white and the background of that title to clear. All right, increase the size of that title as well. Okay. Arizona cities above the 80th percentile, which would continue to work with my input control to switch to California. Then I could see those cities and Florida, etc. So the next line of thinking, if I were a data analyst looking at this and I could see, okay, I can see these cities that are above the 80th percentile. Who are the customers that are in that city that I need to contact or make sure I'm keeping in contact with them? So I would want to be able to select the city and then drill down into customer information. So that's what we're going to do for our next chart. So I'm going to add a new table here with a customer. Let's start with customer city, customer, and let's see, let's do revenue there. And this is the chart that we're going to make the Pareto chart with. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is set up the element linking so we can do the drill down, okay? So on my state chart or city chart up here, I'm going to right click and select linking and add element link. And then just on customer city and next, and we'll apply this to block 2. So even though it currently shows it's a table, when we switch it to a chart, it will still apply that filter to the chart as well. So that's cool. All right, so now if I click on Miami here, you'll see my cities in the table change to Miami. Let me scoot that